children, welcome to our video. And in this video we are going to see an interesting topic and one of the most important topic also children. I hope you are all any guesses who are all there in the sliders show. In today's world, the women empowerment is one of the most important agendas of our country. So they are given a number of rights such as the right to education, to work, to vote in elections, etc. But in older times, it was not so. So the women were deprived of many rights. They were not sent to the school and were married at an early age. So after the long struggles, after the lot of centuries, we have achieved some places in this society children. I hope you're all guessed now. These are all the strong and the most powerful women in our Pudukkottai district. So she is our honorable district collector of Pudukkottai, Mrs. Kavita Ramu, and our DSP, Mrs. Lily Grace, and medical college, that means the medical department dean for the Pudukkottai district, Mrs. Puvati, and Mrs. Nisha Parthiban is a DSP of our Pudukkottai district, and our district CEO is Mrs. Vijay Lakshmi ma'am, and the medical department director is Mrs. Kalaivani. So everybody, RTO and the cooperative, and then the assistant SP, superintendent of police, everything where working is a higher position. Now such an great and bold women, and Pudukkottai district is one of the strongest district now because of these women are working here children. So I'm also proud to be a girl. So let's go to the topic. What this is our topic children, nothing that the women and the reform. Okay, women and the reform, part 1 of this chapter, history. Chapter 8 in the history. So let's go to the topic. What are the learning objectives children? We are going to learn the learning objectives or the various challenges faced by women in the pre-independence period, namely the Sati, child marriage, treatment of widows, and the lack of education. And we are going to discuss why so many reformers focused on issues concerning women and how they visualized the change in the women's conditions. So a small warm up to you, she is Mrs. Sharla Thakral, the first women female pilot of India in the year 1936. So for centuries, women in India occupied a subservient position to men and were considered fit only for the domestic work. Okay, and they were made to observe the purdah and seclusion and not allowed to step outside the house. And this is one of the oldest image of like the photograph of a Rajput royal silver zenana carriage in the princely street of Baroda, India. So in 1895, Oriental and the India Office Collection, British Library. So the picture of a meeting of the All India Muslim League in Lahore in 1940 showing a woman in a body length of burqa. So they were denied education and the right to inherit the property. And they were victims of dreadful social practices such as polygamy, child marriage, ostracism, ill treatment of widows, sati, and the female infanticide. So these are all the major issues of the victims of the dreadful social practices children. So let's see about each individual topic in detail. So first one, when the British arrived in India, these practices appalled them and they initiated a number of reforms. These reforms were met with a stiff resistance for the many sections of the Indian society. So the status of women in Indian society. What are the status of the women in the Indian society? Throughout the 18th century, women in India were the victims of a number of degrading social practices. Some of these are highlighted below. The first one is a lack of education and the child marriage, sati, and the no right to property and the condition of the widow. So these are all the important victims of a number of degrading social practices in the women. So let's see about in detail in the each topic. First one is a lack of education. So, for many centuries, women in India had no access to education. Superstition also claimed that the uneducated women would face the punishment of early widowhood. In the 19th century, the Western educated Indians felt that the educating women was the most effective way to elevate their status in the society. So, thus, the promotion of the female education became the most important agenda of social reforms in India. So, next one is a child marriage. Child marriage was a deep rooted social practice in India. Girls were considered a burden to the family. So, hence, they were married off at a very young age, sometimes as young as 5 or 6 years. In most cases, the groom was a man who was significantly older than a girl. And the child bride experienced the motherhood at a young age and often suffered from ill health due to the frequent childbirth. Some of them even died immediately after giving birth as their bodies were ill prepared for the childbirth. One small video about the child marriage children. See. See, this is a child marriage in particularly, especially in the northern parts of our India. They are practicing these practices like the stupid. And the next one is the Sati. One of the most brutal practices of the 18th century was Sati. So, Sati was practice of self-immolation of the widows on the funeral pyre of their husbands. So, the practice was fairly common across northern India. Many widows were forced to perform Sati, while others chose to commit involuntarily as it rated the miserable life of a widow. And the next one is no right to property. That means, for centuries, women in India could not inherit the ancestral property as daughters or as widows unless a will specified so. A property was inherited by the sons of the deceased. So, this reinforced the dependence of the women on the male members of their family. Even women working on the land were not allowed to own it. And the next one is the condition of widows. The condition of widows was miserable in the 18th century in India. They were subject to ill treatment and the social ostracism. So they were not allowed to remarry. They were considered to bring bad luck and thus were not allowed to participate in the festivals and the weddings. So they were forced to live on the margins of the society and often sent off to the places of the religious importance like the Varanasi and the Vrindavan. And the next one is the social reforms. What are the social reforms for the women in India? The 19th century saw the rise of a new class of Western educated Indians who realized that improving the position of women was essential for the modernization and the progress of India. From around the mid 19th century, some of these Indians joined hands with the British to work towards the uplift of the women in the society. And for a while, social reforms took precedence over the political reforms. Bengal and the Maharashtra were the two regions that played a pioneering roles in this respect. And some of the important social reformers like the notable social reformers like Rajaram Mohan Roy was a reformer from the Bengal. He was a vocal critic of Sati. In 1828, he founded the Brahmo Samaj. And the next one is Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar was an educationalist and the social reformer from the Bengal who championed the causes of the women's education, abolition of the sati and the widow remarriage. And the next one is Pandita Ramabai, a renowned Sanskrit scholar from the Maharashtra, founded the Sasha Sadan for providing the shelter and the education to the widows. And the next one is one of the most important reformer like Jyotirao Phule and his wife Savitribai Phule were leading social reformers in the Maharashtra. They founded a number of schools for the girls. Savitribai was one of the first female teachers in India. Noted children, Mrs. Savitribai Phule was one of the first female teachers in India. And the next one is that Dayanand Saraswati was the founder of the Arya Samaj, which is sought to reform the Hindu society. He fought for the equal rights for the women. So the Justice M.G. Ranada was a judge of the Bombay High Court and was actively involved in the women's issues, especially the child marriage and the widow remarriage. He established the Maharashtra Girls Education Society and the Hasrubaha, the oldest girls' high school in the Maharashtra. So let's recap our topic, children: the status of women in Indian society and the social reform. So these are the major topics, two important topics we covered in this first part of this chapter, children. So we will meet in the next part of this chapter. Thank you all. Thank